This message is for high school players and their parents. As you're going through the recruiting process, you may notice that some college programs have very large rosters, 50, 60, even 70 or more players on their roster. So I want to talk a little bit about what are some important factors to consider and questions to ask when you're considering schools that have a large roster. My name is Matt. I'm a regional advisor with College Athlete Advantage. I help high school players find their best fit for playing college baseball. One important thing to consider with large roster sizes is that sometimes that is out of the coaching staff's control. Some institutions have a quota as far as the number of players that need to be on a specific roster and or the number of recruits that a coach needs to bring in a particular year. On top of that, some schools have a no-cut policy. So even players who were not recruited, if they come to the college and want to play baseball, the coach needs to allow them on the roster and give them an opportunity. In most cases, college baseball programs that carry large rosters will have some sort of JV or developmental program on top of their regular varsity program. And different schools handle the JV or developmental program differently. So here are some potential questions to ask to kind of figure out how that particular college handles the JV program. So one might be, does the JV program practice separately from the varsity team? How many JV games are on the schedule? Do JV players have a chance to eventually move up to varsity if they perform well? Does the number two player at each position start in the JV games? Does the varsity head coach work with the JV players? If you are number 3, number 4 on the depth chart, do you still get to play in JV games? Does the JV team practice as much as the varsity? So those are just a few questions that would be good to ask to feel out how different programs run a JV program. In a lot of cases, institutions will support a large roster by adding coaches. So it's definitely good to ask about the player-to-coach ratio at each school. And along those lines, from a practice standpoint, some good questions to ask are, do all players practice at the same time and in the same place? Do you have enough space or the facilities to handle this big of a roster? Are there any small group or individual practice sessions that allow players to get individual attention? So the bottom line is that while a large roster size could potentially be a red flag, it's not necessarily the case. Having a large roster isn't inherently good or bad. Some programs are going to handle a large roster better than other programs handle a much smaller roster. But it is important to ask good questions to fully understand what your experience is going to be like in that program if the program has a large roster.